Morning. Welcome back to St. Peter's in Hove. I'm Father Alexander, and today on our 217th step in our walking tour through the Bible, I aim to finish off the Song of Songs. Now, there are two things about the Song of Songs. Basically, we're looking at the last bit of it from the third poem onwards. So we're halfway through chapter 3, chapters 4, etc. First of all, there's a great deal of emphasis on physical beauty. Now, this is the man talking about the woman and the woman talking about the man. One of the things that in our culture we tend to go on about a great deal is, ever since the Middle Ages and the tradition of courtly love, is the beauty of women. And therefore, they're beautiful. Well, we all know that, and so on. And people have written endless poems about the beauty of women. But the troubadours sang songs about the beauty of women and so on. But they tend not to talk about the beauty of men, except very much in passing and in very conventional terms. So if you start off chapter 4, here is the man talking about the woman. How beautiful you are, my beloved, how beautiful you are. Your eyes are doves behind your veil. Your hair is like a flock of goats surging down Mount Gilead. Your teeth like a flock of sheep to be shorn when they come up from the washing. Each one has its twin, not one unpaired with another. Your lips are a scarlet thread, and your words enchanting. Your cheeks behind your veil are halves of pomegranate. Your neck is the Tower of David built on layers, hung round with 1,000 bucklers, and each a shield of a hero. Your two breasts are two fawns, twins of a gazelle that feed among the lilies. Now, this is obviously, he's very taken with the lady at this stage, but it is quite comical, isn't it, in some ways, to say that your hair is like a flock of goats. Okay, a flock of goats seen in the distance coming down Mount Gilead. And then, of course, he talks about her teeth and saying that, unlike most people, she's got them all, which again is not something you'd say nowadays about your beloved. Each tooth is paired with another, you see. She doesn't have a gap there and a gap there and so on. And your neck is the Tower of David, built on layers, hung round with 1,000 bucklers. Bucklers are shields. So this is a military comparison with her neck and a fortress. Again, rather strange. But it's clear that he is taken with her physically. Your two breasts are two fawns. Well, I don't know what a fawn, what the point of comparison is there. I'll leave that to your imagination. Okay, let's go. That's chapter 4 at the beginning. Now let's look at chapter 5, starting with verse 10. She returns the compliment. She describes him. My love is fresh and ruddy. Well, King David was described as a ruddy youth. In other words, he's got bloom to his cheeks. His skin has not yet gone, it's not yet aged with the pallor of old age. To be known among 10,000. And I think every girl who's in love with a boy thinks that her boyfriend is the outstanding one among 10,000. His head is golden, purest gold could refer to the colour of his hair. His locks are palm fronds and black as the raven, so it's not the colour of his hair. His eyes are like doves beside the watercourses, bathing themselves in milk, perching on a fountain rim. His cheeks are beds of spices, banks sweetly scented. His lips are lilies, distilling pure myrrh. His hands are golden, rounded, set with jewels of Tarshish. His belly is a block of ivory covered with sapphires. His legs are alabaster columns set in sockets of pure gold. His appearance is that of Lebanon, unrivaled as the cedars. His conversation is sweetness itself. He is altogether lovable. Such is my love, such is my friend, O daughter of Jerusalem. Now, quite extraordinary this, that first of all, his legs are like alabaster. Well, they're sort of pale, aren't they? Because they're not exposed to the sunshine, one assumes. But she's talking about his legs, she's talking about his belly. I very much dislike the word belly. She's talking about his stomach, she's talking about his torso. And of course, in those days, still in the Middle East, it's the rule, you cover up, you never take your clothes off. In fact, this idea of taking your clothes off, very much a modern idea, going to the beach and things like that. Nobody ever took their clothes off before in the Middle Ages, for example, and except maybe to have a bath, which they did about once or twice a year. And similarly, how does she know about these things? Well, anyway, she does. His belly is a block of ivory, see, untainted by the sun, covered with sapphires. It's a very strange sort of thing to do. Anyway, I find that these physical descriptions are very strange. Your eyes are like pools and so on and so forth. I find it very strange. What I also find rather strange is they do make reference to the conversation. His conversation is sweetness itself. You don't really want to be stuck with somebody who's very, very beautiful, but who has nothing to say, I would humbly suggest. What we've got here is an emphasis, an overwhelming emphasis on how people look. And Oscar Wilde said, did he not, we live in an age of surfaces. And these descriptions are of surfaces. They are therefore superficial. There's nothing about the moral qualities of either the man or the woman. Okay, we hear that their conversation is delightful, but that's all we hear. What I would say is this: how you look is probably the least important thing about you. Nowadays, we do live in a world which is very lookist, as it's sometimes called. How you look is rather important, particularly if you want to be a model or you want to be in advertising or something like that. You want to be on television. They say, oh, so-and-so's got a face made for radio. Yes, okay. How you look, of course, the other thing that really changes is, of course, how our ancestors considered beauty is rather different from what we consider beauty today. Our ancestors, particularly in the 18th century, liked their young ladies to be plump. We like our young ladies to be not plump, in fact, quite thin. A girl can't be too rich or too thin, said the Duchess of Windsor, allegedly. So the standard of beauty changes because beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Beauty is an impression. Beauty is essentially superficial. And of course, beauty does not last. If you go back to the book of Proverbs, the poem of the perfect wife, there's very little about her appearance. There's a great deal about her abilities and her character. Here we've got very little about character, very little about abilities, and it's all about appearance. How superficial, how in many ways disappointing. So I think this love poetry, this almost deliriously passionate love poetry, should leave us feeling a little bit cautious. Appearance is not everything. Okay, now let's get to the end of the Song of Songs, to the last chapter, chapter 8. And she is saying here, ah, why are you not my brother, nursed at my mother's breast? Then, if I met you out of doors, I could kiss you without people thinking ill of me. So it isn't a licit relationship. If only you were my brother or my close relative or my foster brother, we'd been breastfed together, we'd been brought up together, then, if I kissed you, everybody would say, oh, well, they're just old friends. They're family members. But as a matter of fact, we're not family members. We're not married. We're not together. We're not a recognized couple. And therefore, our relationship is subject to disapproval. And I should lead you. I should take you into my mother's house, and you would teach me. I should give you spiced wine to drink, juice of my pomegranates. Okay, in other words, why isn't our relationship recognized by the wider community? Makes you think, doesn't it? And here we have, of course, why can't we be married? Why aren't we married? When you're married, your relationship is recognized by the wider community, and your relationship is somehow or another tamed, normal, part of the way things are. Now, I think what we've seen already in this poem is that love is something anarchic. The little foxes, if you remember them, who play havoc. Whereas, of course, once you're married, once the anarchy of love is contained by the form of marriage, then that anarchy is tamed and things are much more manageable. And therefore, the anarchy of love has to be contained by marriage if we are to be able to live in peace and harmony with each other. it seems to me. Love is anarchy, or this type of love is anarchy, but love can also be civilizational, it can also be building up of society, and therefore this is where marriage comes in. This is not a poem about marriage. This is a poem about what the world would be like if marriage did not exist. Then finally, in this chapter, we have a few bits and pieces that have been put together because they don't really sort of form a whole. And we have this very short bit, which is actually quoted in the breviary, verses 6 and 7. Set me like a seal on your heart, like a seal on your arm. For love is strong as death, passion as relentless as Sheol, the grave, hell, the underworld, something like that. The flash of it is a flash of fire, a flame of Yahweh himself. Love no flood can quench, no torrents drown. Were a man to offer all his family wealth to buy love, contempt is all he would gain. So love is a force of nature. Love is something that cannot be repressed. It's a flash of it is the flash of it is a flash of fire. It's like a lot of thunder and lightning. It's like a lightning strike. It's something that cannot be put out by water. Its passion is as relentless as the grave. And the tradition of courtly literature which we've inherited tells us that that is the truth. Oh, what can ail thee, knight at arms, alone and palely loitering? The sedge has withered from the lake, and no birds sing. La belle dame, sans merci, hath thee in thrall. You might remember that very famous poem, which I did when I was about 8 years old, not understanding it at all. In other words, love, sickness, love is a disease. Love is something that destroys you. So get married. If you can't cope with this terrible, tame your passions, get married. Okay? Well, that's what I think. I might be completely wrong about all this, but that's how I read the poem. And that's enough of the Song of Songs. All the very best. Bye.